Are you looking to switch industries? Are you looking to switch roles? Are you looking to stay in the same industry, a different role? How does the next role play into the overall picture that you see for your long-term career? So that is the first, is around your career goal, right? Then you want to look at like financial stability. Are you thinking about, are you going to leave your job without having a role in mind and lined up? Or are you waiting until, are you going to stay there until you find another role? So on today's episode, we are talking about 3 key questions that you want to ask yourself before you start your job search and enter into the job market. So it's important to ask yourself these questions because you want to make sure you explore clarity around your plan and the next steps into your job search before you decide to enter into a job search. And a lot of times I think that before we enter into our new job search, we don't take some things into consideration. And so today we're going to cover just 3 basic questions that you want to make sure that you ask yourself and you answer before you start your job search. All right. So again, these to me are 3 steps that I found critical so that you don't feel stuck in your search and that you really gain clarity. So last episode, we talked about clarity, and that's really what we have to get to a point in, making sure that we have as much clarity as possible before we go into a job search, before we even start the search, right? To make sure that we have a strategic and intentional plan when deciding to make that move. So let's get started. Get your pens and papers out, ladies and gentlemen, and people. Make sure you listen to this episode more than once, because I want to make sure that you are very intentional before you start your search. These are questions that before I even when I meet with clients, these are some of the questions that I ask them just to see how ready people are for a search. Yes, you're like, you've gotten on a call with me. I do private coaching. And so I have a fit call or a consultation with clients for 30 minutes or potential clients for 30 minutes before we ever even get to working together one-on-one. But I asked them these questions, especially for people who are currently in a role and they're looking to transition into another industry, another role, etc. I lead them or ask them some questions for them to sometimes go back and reflect on, so that they truly understand if it's something that why they're looking to make this career change or shift out of their current organization. I think that is very significant in your job search. So the first question is, what are your reasons for wanting to leave your current role? What are your reasons for wanting to leave your current role? And so this question is more so around some self-reflection, whether you are dissatisfied with current factors within the organization. Maybe there's some personal stress. Maybe it doesn't fit your long-term vision. There can be a misalignment with your personal values and your professional values. There's a lack of growth opportunities within the organization. There could be a couple of different things. So when I break this question down, part of that is around self-reflection, asking yourself, why is it that you want to leave the current role? So what you want to do is identify those specific problems Again, is it a toxic work environment, lack of recognition, a limited career advancement? And really get granular and say, you know what, limited career advancement. I've been here 3 years. I've interviewed for a higher level role 3 times and I've been told no. I've asked for reasons about why I haven't gotten promotion. It's always next time, and next time never happens. Like being able to get very clear about that. Adequate compensation. I see that the people who are coming in are getting $20,000, $30,000 more for the same role, and I'm getting 2 or 3% merit increases every year. I'm doing these particular tasks. I'm taking on extra roles. I'm wearing all the hats and I'm not being adequately compensated. So those are very specific, right? Like you understand what the specific issues are. So one is high level and then getting into the specific details and then being able to evaluate that. Like, again, we can talk about how is this impacting your well-being, your physical health, your mental health, your marriage, your overall job satisfaction? So again, going from I'll call it the self-reflection to the specific issue and then to the personal impact, right? So there are 3 areas in that question you want to go back and do, right? Do the self-reflection, get specific, and then how is it impacting you? Okay, so that is question number 1. Question number 2 is, do I have a clear plan for the next steps? This is where you want to talk about your career goals and define what your career goals are, how your job changes really fit into your long-term career plan. Are you looking to switch industries? Are you looking to switch roles? Are you looking to stay in the same industry, a different role? How does this advancement how does the next role play into the overall picture that you see for your long-term career? So that is the first, is around your career goal, right? Then you want to look at like financial stability. Are you thinking about, are you going to leave your job without having a role in mind and lined up? Or are you are you going to stay there until you find another role? And I deal with people in both aspects. I'm working with a client right now who left her job without having another job lined up. So for her, it was around financial stability and making sure that she had 7, 8 months of savings in the bank just in case it took her longer to find a role than she initially may have anticipated. She thought it would take her 2 months and she did that by herself. So in month 3, she said, hey, you know what? I need help because I don't want to continue to go down this path of not having a job in month 4, month 5, month 6, and run out of that emergency savings. So think about your savings, any impact that this may have on you financially. What are you going to do? Sometimes, again, maybe you are going to leave, but you do have a second source of income, whether that be a significant other or some other streams of revenue coming in as well. Look at that. And then the other part of that is making sure you understand the current landscape, the current job market. Research companies in the market or the industries in which you're interested in. What does that current demand look like? What does a skill set require? This includes you starting to do some updates to your resume, your LinkedIn profile, start networking, building relationships, going through that entire process, right? To understand, okay, if I'm looking to stay in the same industry, do I know people who are already in the industry who just work at different companies and there is a role within another company, same industry, that I can just pivot into? So some people it can be just that easy, right? They're not making a significant change when it comes to their career. They're just switching organizations, right? Staying in the same industry, just a different organization. So those are the things you want to consider. When we talk about your career plan too, the other thing you want to think about is your professional development. Does this require again, depending on what type of pivot you're looking to make, does this require you to get a certification? Does it require for you to have some type of skill that you don't already have and you need to close the gap in order to reach that next level or role? Or again, if you're making a pivot to something, you're like, this pivot will require for me to have X certifications. What is your plan to do in order to close that gap? So again, this may look like certifications, education, and some skill leveling up that you may need to do. Okay. That is number 2. Number 3 is around exploring opportunities within your current company. Now, for some of you, this may not apply to you, but some of you may want to investigate lateral moves, promotions, new projects within the current company. Sometimes just changing departments can just give you a new satisfaction, new job satisfaction. For some of you, it is going to require for you to exit the organization, but not for all. Before you decide, this is where we talked about in a few episodes back, right? Moving up or moving out of the organization, or even moving across in the organization. Maybe it's not the culture, maybe it's just your manager. And so moving into another part of the organization. So you have to really look at this from a holistic viewpoint. Again, depending on what your issues are in point number 1 will really help you decide if, when you get to question number 3, should I even explore internal opportunities? Yes or no? Yes, because, or no, because. And if, again, you're going to do that, maybe it requires some personal development, looking at some training. Is there a certification that you need to get? Is there anything there that may, again, going back to skills, is there a skills gap in the role in which you're looking for internally? The thing I like about internal roles when we're looking is we get to allow our organization to be our angel investor, right? Like we get to learn on the job and utilize the organization to help us close those gaps, right? So this is, hey, I'm going to get on this project because by being on this particular project is going to allow me to acquire X skill set, and X skill set is required for that next level or higher level role or lateral move. They want someone that has a little more of X experience in this particular software. And guess what? We use the software at work. Great. We're going to use it on this particular project. So there are things that when you look at roles internally, you can utilize the organization to help you acquire said skills. The other part of this is when we talk about exploring internal opportunities is getting feedback and communication. Having honest conversations with your hiring managers, with HR about any concerns or career aspirations. They might offer you a solution that you just have not considered, or maybe there is something that, again, being an internal employee, you have access to job openings that aren't available to people who would be an external candidate. You having those conversations. This is why I really highly recommend having a cadence. I prefer a weekly one-on-one, but this is why I really stress the importance of having a cadence with your manager so that they know what projects you're working on. And outside of just talking about projects, but what are your career aspirations, especially if it is to stay within the organization and grow within the organization. Hiring managers also talk to other hiring managers and decision makers within the organization. So being able to have that conversation with them about what your goals are, and they can say, hey, you know what? There is going to be an opening, or such and such just left. You may not know these things, right? Someone just left the organization based on your skill set, based on your education, your expertise, so on and so forth. that will actually be a great position for you to consider. So having these conversations and having that feedback and being open and honest about some of those things for most people can be beneficial. Now, sometimes we can have those conversations with our managers and there are not always receptive to us leaving the organization or wanting to not leave the organization, but to leave their department. And so sometimes it may not be beneficial, but you should at least try to have that conversation and see how open and receptive your leader is being to you, because that will go back again to point number one when you talk about career advancement and saying, hey, you know what? I don't have a supportive leader. They don't support my professional development. They're not being an advocate when it comes to me moving over to other parts of the organization. They actually are holding me back from doing some of these things, right? That goes into point number one. You're like, yes, I've tried that. I'm very clear on, hey, this is what I've tried and why it hasn't worked. And I'm very unsatisfied with the organization because of said things. So that is the other part of that. Next, when we talk about staying within the current organization is the company culture. Reflect back on the company culture and the company values and whether or not this is a factor and if this influences you to want to stay or want to go. A lot of times, more so now than ever, I see that even for myself, that culture plays a huge factor on whether or not someone chooses to stay or go. I'm working with a client now and we just met on yesterday. And in our conversation, she was just telling me like the next organization that she works for, like the culture fit has to be right just because of where she is now in the organization and how it's not a good culture fit. And she's been there almost 4 years and how it just hasn't got any better over that period of time. Okay. All right. So those are the 3 questions that you want to ask yourself as you're deciding to say, hey, I'm going to start my job search, but before I do, what do I need to consider? All right. Go back, listen to this episode as much as you need to, and make sure you can answer all 3 of those questions. Okay. All right. I will talk to you next time. Take care, and I will speak to you soon. Bye-bye.